We're rolling.
All right. Welcome to the regular town council meeting Monday, April 14th for the town of St. Paul. Call to order, please.
Mr. Simmons. Here. Mr. Trevino.
Here.
Mr. Graham. Here. Mr. Swanner.
Here.
Mr. Dryden.
Here.
Mr. Nell. Here.
Okay, if you all would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 3 is announcements. The election on May 3rd, the town will hold an election and select 3 council members. The following candidates appear on the ballot. Seat 1 is Larry Nell and Jason Sabatka. Seat 2 is David Dryden and David Ginsler. And seat 4 is unopposed with J.T. Trevino. Early voting will take place on April 21 to April 29th, with election day on May 3rd. Hours will be 7 to 7. So there's another announcement on the notice to proceed with Park Road extension. They've cut the bids. This project has been scheduled for May 5th. The project will extend Park Road through St. Paul and includes the construction of a 4-lane roadway with provisions for an eventual expansion to a 6-lane divided thoroughfare. Upon completion, the extension will establish a direct connection between Park Road and State Highway 78. The project completion is currently anticipated by the end of 2027.
Mayor, can I have 30 seconds?
Absolutely.
Scott, I just want to let you know that I appreciate you and the entire staff. Last meeting, I kind of spoke out of turn, so I just want to let you know that I appreciate you and everything that you do for us.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Item number 4 is public comments. At this time, individuals are invited to address the council regarding any item on the meeting agenda or matters not listed on the agenda. Each speaker will be allotted up to 3 minutes to ensure all speakers have an opportunity to be heard and maintain meeting efficiency. The mayor may adjust the speaking time as needed, uniformly reducing the time for all speakers if necessary. I don't think we have a big crowd here tonight, so I don't think that's going to be necessary. I didn't get the sheets. Did you fill out anything tonight, Joel?
No, I did not.
Okay. Thank you. We got one for Sarah Beth Graham. If you would step up, please give your name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Sarah Beth Graham. My address is 3525 Lakeway Drive in St. Paul, Texas.
Go ahead.
Good? Okay. Tonight I would like to discuss agenda item 6.4 regarding reported code violations on my family's property. There are 2 items up for discussion on our property. The first one is directed at the safety of our above-ground swimming pool. Our pool is one of the safest in the town and has been since the day we put it up. The current St. Paul swimming pool ordinance references having a residential swimming pool completely enclosed with a solid structure. An above-ground pool has a solid structure completely enclosing it. Our current code also directs Chapter 757 of the Texas Health and Safety Code as a reference. However, that state code has an application that's only for HOAs and apartment complexes, so residential swimming pools don't fall under the requirements of this document. The current St. Paul town ordinance is confusing, not applicable, and needs to be updated. Given that the town administration is now concerned with enforcing the existing swimming pool ordinances based on these inapplicable state codes, how many other residents were notified of their pool violations? I made a quick drive around the town and noticed many swimming pools out of compliance using this outdated standard. As Mr. Caperton noted in his email to the town regarding Chapter 757, if that's the standard we are using for residential swimming pool requirements, then the use of chain link fencing materials is prohibited entirely. A large majority of in-ground pools I drove by were enclosed by chain link or some other type of prohibited fencing. None of the allowable fencing types suggested as approved by Mr. Caperton in his email, that being a wood or PVC picket fence or a masonry wall, have been used by a large majority of pool owners in the town. No other current pool owner is being held to this standard. Why is selective enforcement on swimming pools being directed only at my family's property? It's important to note that this observation isn't a critique of fellow residents, but rather an illustration of the broader implications of the ordinance's enforcement. The other item outlined in the emails from the packet regards Article 6 R 1.5 Single Family Residential District 6-3. Under setbacks, it lists out physical structures not allowed in a setback and gives examples. Swimming pool, a tennis court, a soccer field. A dirt path is not a physical structure, it is dirt. If the town is desiring to ban dirt in a setback, then there are many St. Paul properties in violation of this interpretation. Why are all of the other residents who have dirt paths or physical structures not listed on tonight's agenda? This is yet another example of selective enforcement being targeted toward my family. In the email from Mr. Albert, he mentions that a go-kart track is not a permitted use within the residential zoning district. Mr. Albert, can you please point me to this section in the ordinance where permitted recreational activities are outlined?
If you look at the land use chapter in the zoning ordinance, it specifically references what uses are allowed.
It doesn't have recreational uses listed.
That's correct.
So our code doesn't explicitly state that on my property, one of the permitted uses is that I'm allowed to play basketball. Am I permitted to play baseball with my boys in the front yard? What if they regularly run in the same area and create a dirt path? Is that now a violation? Can we ride a bicycle on our property? And my point being that we don't have a permitted use section in our ordinance for recreational activities. This alleged violation is based purely on a selective interpretation that is a strong government overreach. One that a year ago, when the town council voted to take no action, elicited a passionate community response against that overreach. This is yet another example of selective enforcement targeted toward my family. And lastly, I would like to point out publicly the amount of financial resources that have been spent on these two code ordinance discussions. The town attorney has been consulted, a third-party inspection company has been consulted, our code enforcement officer has been directed to investigate this matter, our town administrator and the town assistant administrator have both spent time and thus have been paid to work on this topic. That's 5 different groups of people or people being paid to investigate these 2 items. A safe swimming pool that needs an updated ordinance and a dirt path. This has cost the St. Paul taxpayers money, and all of this money spent was on the basis of how many different people complaining about my family's property. I presume only one. One ex-official who has abused his power and has admittedly sent our town and its resources down this path as a form of political retaliation. I'm requesting that the council vote to amend Ordinance 3.06.001 so that it is updated for all St. Paul town residents who may desire to install an above-ground pool in the future. I am respectfully requesting the council vote to allow dirt paths and any of the multitude of recreational activities that may occur on one's property, or agree to have this permanently dropped. Thank you for your time tonight.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Sarah Beth. Don't have any paperwork on anyone else since it's a small number. Does anybody else want to speak or say anything? You good? Okay. So at this time, we'll close the public comment section, and we're going to go to item 5, consent agenda. And tonight, we have the approval of minutes for February 10, March the 3rd, and also March the 10th regular meeting. So if you guys will take a look at those. Let me know if you have any discussion.
Just for the record, I noticed that we don't have financials. Can you speak to when we're going to be able to get?
I'm going to try and get those all caught up by the May meeting, because I have been behind.
Okay,
I'll make a goal to have them in front of you by May.
and so next month we'll have financials for what period?
January through April.
So we'll be able to at least see through April?
Right.
In the May meeting?
Right.
So that's what, 10 days or something like that? What day in May is the meeting?
I'd have to go back and look. Is it 12th.
So you'd be able to do April's?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Keep in mind, we've been transitioning from the desktop QuickBooks to online. That's been a little more cumbersome than what we were expecting, plus the workload. We just haven't been able to complete everything we've needed to. And we're trying to learn the QuickBooks Online, so we're moving that along, and we should have all the reports ready for you by May as well.
Do we need to include these, with these minutes, the financials, so it's all one before we?
I was just looking to see whether there were no financials in the minutes, in the previous minutes, so there's not, I think we can still approve the minutes without seeing them. I just want to know when to expect them. When is, our audit was done through what period?
September through October, or October through September, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. As long as it's on next meeting's agenda, that's good.
You make a motion to approve the minutes with the exclusion of the financial statements?
Second. Okay, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. That'll complete the consent agenda, item number 5. We move on now to regular agenda. 6-1, discussion and possible action on resolutions number 25, resolution number 25-04-14A, appointing a municipal judge and additional personnel, and approving the first amended interlocal agreement for combined municipal court services between the city of Parker and the town of St. Paul. This is just a small amendment change. One of their council members brought up at the last council meeting in Parker. And so we sent that to Clark. Clark went ahead and changed everything, got it. Catherine Clifton is their town attorney, emailed it over to Clark. He made the necessary changes. And so at this time, it includes, I believe it includes the court, David Hill as well.
Yeah, it includes.
So they didn't do it as 2 items, they did it as one. We're voting to adopt their municipal court judge, David Hill, as well as agree to the interlocal agreement you guys basically saw last time with a very minor change.
In the event that they change judges, is this ordinance going to have to change as well?
We should be, we're renting their services. The way I understand it is,
Well, you're
we
adopting.
would have to re-adopt, but we would still be under their
Okay.
service
So
contract.
your action tonight is that you're adopting a resolution to appoint a municipal court judge that is in the ILA,
Mhm.
in addition to the First Amendment to the ILA you approved a month ago. So if they do change a judge, I would assume you'll come back and just pass a resolution at that time.
Okay, thank you.
So do we have any discussion at this time?
You said the minor change, is that just?
Section 15, the very last section in the ILA. And there were some minor changes, like changing city to town, but it's the last section on the very.
Basically, their councilman last month brought up a point where I think the first original, I'm going to paraphrase everything, the first original agreement said we, town of St. Paul and Parker, would decide on the municipal court judge. Their councilman, since we were renting their services, said Parker should be allowed to pick that judge. And I believe that was the major change. Am I wrong?
That's correct.
It's the best way to put it. So it takes our pick out, and we just rent their services, their judge.
Well, you have to approve the judge.
Correct.
So once they decide who their judge is, you have to accept that judge, and that's the
Correct.
action you're taking tonight.
I have no questions.
Okay. Larry?
No.
Okay. Justin? JT?
Not good.
Make a motion that we accept the proposal.
Okay. Have a motion on the floor to accept the proposal as is.
6.1.
Is it 6.1?
It's just a copy of it. Yeah, it's just a copy. I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I'm sorry, who seconded that? Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. Item 6-2, discussion and possible action on resolution number 25-04-14B regarding the town's consent or non-consent to the inclusion of its ETJ within the Collin County Emergency Services District Number 1. So this is something that Chris Hill, petition was put out. Chris Hill forwarded it after the petition came out to form Emergency Services District within the county properties. So for all the towns with ETJ, you can explain it as well as I can. Basically, we have to consent to let those property owners vote in the ESD election or not. So discussions and questions that come from that.
So if they're not allowed to vote, then who are they covered by?
So the way Chris Hill explained it to me was if we consent to let them vote and the ESD does not pass, it's basically left where it is now. If we elect to not let them participate in the meeting, in the vote, and the vote passes and we don't let them vote, then the question is, who offers that fire protection at that time to the county properties? So, because the county, if we didn't let them vote, they couldn't be in the ESD. So if they're not in the ESD, who covers the fire service and such? So that's one aspect of it as well. Scott can fill you in a little bit better on, in his letter, explaining about the tax burden and some of the other things that could be shared. So go ahead, Scott, if you would.
This evening I left, this is a statement for me, but I should put my name on it. The reason why I left it there is for two reasons. One, just for you all to have the information. But two, I'll probably massage this statement a little bit more, but the county's going to hold a hearing on the ESD, I think it's July 21st. And as a resident of Collin County, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to enter this statement or some form of it into the record. But when you establish an ESD, you're basically relinquishing your ETJ to that ESD. And for a tax, a property tax can be up to 10 cents, I think is the max.
10 cents.
But they also,
It's for all purposes, you're saying?
for EMS and fire, that's it.
Thank you.
But they also have the option to collect the 2 cents, the 2% that's in your ETJ if it's not already being used by a local municipality. So there are a couple of issues that I want everyone to be aware of when that happens. And even if, whether it's St. Paul, whether it's Salina, whether it's Melissa, when that takes place, even if you move forward with annexing an area that's in an ESD, the likelihood of you being able to recoup that 2 cents back into your budget is probably not going to happen. So there are significant revenue losses, not just to communities like St. Paul, but to communities that are growing rapidly, whether it's Salina, whether it's McKinney, whether it's Melissa, that typically as they grow and the areas are developing in the ETJ, they are negotiating to bring those areas in with the understanding that they're going to obviously have the property tax with sales tax, but that will be revenue gone, but it's going to be gone. And you'll never receive that revenue back. And that could be a substantial amount of revenue for some communities who are growing further north. So if you look at the map that was attached to the petition that was filed by the group of residents and the area they're talking about, you'll notice that a lot of the ETJ that's still open is further north where the growth is moving. And all of the rest of the ETJ, where it's black, it's all taken up because the cities have expanded and they have assumed the responsibilities of those areas. So there's two things that I hope that each community starts to think about, especially further north. You will never be able to obtain the sales tax in your ETJ if you try to dissolve an ESD when you annex the area. And actually when you dissolve the ESD, you're going to have to immediately pay for a portion of their bonds that may be outstanding. You're going to have to also pay for a percentage of their assets, equipment, facilities. So the likelihood of being able to bring that back into your community is very slim. It's not on that magnitude for the city of St. Paul, but it's still a matter that you need to consider because it's one of the tools that you have to negotiate. The other thing that everyone needs to keep in mind, even when you establish an ESD, I assure you, paid city departments and volunteer departments will still be responding to the ETJ. Because you cannot generate enough money and create enough facilities to cover the area. So I don't want people to walk into this blindly. And the only thing that I'm asking our elected officials at the county level, because I think we've actually put the cart before the horse here. I think it's a wonderful idea. But just to arbitrarily move forward and levy another tax on our citizens without putting a plan of understanding where those facilities are going to be, what it's going to cost, is exactly what we're trying to clean up in Washington, D.C. And we're doing the very thing here. And I don't see how we can sit still and let this continue to go on. It's the very thing that we're all upset about. And all you're going to do is end up levying a tax without any real plan of how it's going to impact the community.
Question.
And for St. Paul, I think it's the one tool you have left to work with people in the ETJ, if you want to.
I have a question. When Park Boulevard gets expanded, is that going through ETJ or town land?
It's a mix. Part of it's in the town, but the majority of it's in the ETJ.
Because they're pushing some of that to be commercial,
Yes.
which there could be property tax revenue and sales tax revenue if that were brought into the
All
town.
right. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole here, but obviously where Park and Parker are going to intersect, depending upon how much ETJ you have available in that area, that could be a significant revenue source. And I haven't, obviously haven't put the numbers together, I've done an economic analysis or financial analysis yet, but I've always been under the idea that if there's any community in Collin County that could really abolish their property tax and survive solely on sales tax, if it was structured correctly, would be the town of St. Paul. And I really think that's possible. But as time moves forward and we lose the ETJ and we're not working with the property owners out in the ETJ, and we're not being proactive, those options are going to go by. And the ESD, definitely, if we consent to allowing the ESD to be created within the town of St. Paul's ETJ, you're finished.
So your recommendation is that we proactively vote against the ESD?
I think the ESD is a wonderful idea, but I just don't think the appropriate planning has taken place.
And we have to vote either yea or nay.
Yes.
We can't abstain.
Yes.
That's correct. We can't ignore this.
Yes.
So, okay.
I think
Thank you.
the question for me would be, because there's House bills, there's still, I think one's in committee, and you know that, to do
Right.
away with ETJ altogether.
Right.
So no matter how this vote goes, if we vote to not let them into this vote, we're basically signing off on offering them fire protection if it goes forward. Now, it may all go away if they do away with ETJ in the House this year.
Right.
So where does that leave us at that particular point? We've already committed to offering fire protection at a premium dollar, and with only the possibility we may ever get a dime
Right.
back.
So if the state statute goes through that you're referencing as far as eliminating ETJ altogether, then we don't have anything. It doesn't matter if we consent or not, it's done. And the county's going to take over. So it really doesn't matter, even the vote you take tonight, really wouldn't matter. Because you don't have, extraterritorial jurisdiction doesn't exist in the state of Texas anymore.
Right, no, I get that point.
And we could bill someone in the ETJ.
Well, see, that's the
for
other part,
services.
David, that I briefly mentioned this to the mayor. You know, I wish we had more time to do our own due diligence as far as what decision we want to make tonight. Because I would have liked to present it to the council tonight, not just an economic analysis, but as far as what we could gain in the ETJ as far as sales tax, but also how can we recoup our cost as far as fire and ambulance service out in the ETJ. And one of the options that we've talked about, the mayor and I, for the past 8 months I've been here, there could be an opportunity for the city of Lucas, the city of Parker, the city of St. Paul, come together and start their own public safety department. But those are discussions down the road. And I just think we're being forced, I think all the communities in Collin County are being forced into making a decision without having the appropriate plans and data in front of them to make the right decisions for their communities. And the reason why I say it, because I've experienced it. I've worked with an ESD. And we had a developer outside our city who was going to do a multi-use with residential and commercial. And we thought, this is wonderful. But it was in the ETJ, they wanted to come into the city. But when we talked about annexing in the revenue that we were going to possibly get through sales tax, that's when I had learned the likelihood of us getting the 2 cents was it was an uphill battle. And that we would have to retire part of the ESD's debt. We'd have to buy the assets. And the ESD itself that was in the area, the nearest station was miles away. It wasn't even close. And our volunteer fire department responded all the time out to the ETJ, not just the city, but the ETJ. That's what I'm saying. Even when you create this ESD, it's not going to resolve the issue of cities going out into ETJ. Because no one's going to say no to help somebody. They're still going to be going.
Well, the county's not gonna have enough funding to build a fire response.
The county,
station.
from what I understand, talking to several different people involved in this, so the county numbers are questionable. Ag property is, raising 10 cents on ag property is not gonna bring in much.
No.
So even a 10-cent raise is gonna be a stretch for the county to be able to put together an ESD, I think. The other question would be, is it gonna pass? If you ask most taxpayers, are you willing to vote in 10 cents extra on your taxes? Most people in the world today pretty much don't vote in favor of raising your own taxes. So I think it's a long shot to pass. That's my only concern, and I've talked to Scott about it. If we do not let them vote on their own personal property, are we not taking that over to furnish premium fire service at our own taxpayers? And the question is, at what point do we recover any of those taxes back? We might be able to annex something or get sales tax in the future. But the question is, how far in the future is that? We all know St. Paul and how it hasn't grown in mega years. So the question is, are our taxpayers willing to pick up that tab if we get burdened with that at the time? For me, it's a personal issue. If I had property in the county, I'd want to be able to vote on my own property, period. That's how I look at it. But you guys may look at something a little bit different. Me and Scott look at it a little different. There's okay to have those differences. So
I don't know if it prevents them from voting. I mean, you can still go vote. The only decision you're making this evening is whether you want the town of St. Paul's ETJ
to participate in the
to be
ESD.
part of it. That doesn't prevent the property owners of the ETJ from voting. And there's also a process for them to move forward and request that the ETJ.
From what Chris Hill told me, if we deny them the participation in voting, they will not be included in the ESD at any time. That's what he told me. And so I have to take the man's word. He's the one come up with this.
But I don't see how that makes the converse true, to where if we don't allow them to vote, then now we've got to provide fire service for them. That's not what we're saying. We're not.
I mean, the county will not offer them fire service at that point.
Well, that would be on the
County
county. The
doesn't
county's going to
offer
have
service
to. The county's going to
Well, I
have
mean,
to. Because the
if-
precedent's already been set that the county did before.
If-
So the county can't get out of that.
If
They're gonna
Wiley
have to respond.
If Wiley responds to a fire on an ETJ property, do we get billed for that?
I haven't seen anything come across since I've been here where we've been billed.
So that- I mean,
And our
what would
contract is
change?
specifically for the town.
They're no longer going to get any fire emergency services,
There's no way that they won't respond.
but that's the proposed.
What they're trying to do, well, I think the way they're explaining it to me is what they're trying to do is, for anybody that does not participate in the ESD, they want to not, the ESD being a private, it's more like a private company.
It's a political subdivision.
Yeah,
So imagine, I mean, just like a municipal utility district, it's a political subdivision. An ESD is a political subdivision. And they have the same authority to go out and issue debt, to purchase their equipment, hire their personnel, no different than this governing body.
So they just wouldn't be a part of that ESD.
Right.
it's kind of
And it would remain the way it is now.
That's
There's
correct.
no way they can get out of responding.
well, it's like the city of Melissa right now has, and
And for no other
Farmersville.
reason, they can't get out of it because of the public, the court of, what do they call it, court of public opinion. You know, can you imagine the 8 o'clock
Well, I can-
news or whatever?
I can tell you this,
They say, well, they didn't
Melissa-
respond because, you know, the county decided not to do it anymore, and so they just let that whole thing burn down and 5 people died. They're not gonna do that. They're gonna keep responding.
Melissa,
There's no way they can put us on the list for
Melissa
it, because
and
we've never
Farmersville-
set the precedents to pay for it in the past.
Okay.
all I know is Melissa and Farmersville have pulled out of running into the county. Currently, they do not go into the county. So there are fire departments out there that are starting to get this from a cost factor on their citizens. So I can't tell you what's gonna go or not go. I'm just telling you what I was told by Chris Hill. And it's up to us to decide if we want to let our ETJ participate in voting for the ESD or not.
Really, I think it's about whether you want your ETJ to be part of it. They can still vote. Nothing's taking away their right to vote. And they can still move forward to request our ETJ to be included. There's a process for that, with property owners in our ETJ, where they can do it themselves.
So we're getting conflicting information. So
Yes.
So it sounds like that Chris Hill is saying that if we don't vote for this, then they can't vote, but you're saying they still get to vote.
Yeah.
They cannot get into the ESD.
So they can still go vote for it, but it would
Right.
be effective.
Right. It's not taking away the vote.
So the message would still be sent by those citizens.
That's my only concern is if it becomes a cost burden for the town of St. Paul. In any
But you're
way.
suggesting, or that it might be, even if we started having to pay for fire calls, the sales tax potential revenue could far exceed the cost of responding to emergencies.
You don't have as large of an ETJ, and I would assume the majority of what's going to be your ETJ in the future is going to be commercial in a lot of that area. You know, that's why, David, quite honestly, I'm a little disappointed in how this process has moved forward from the county, because there's so many questions that this is a significant decision. And we can't be the only ones that are questioning it, where I wish I could come before council and tell you that, yeah, you know, if we were not participating in ESD and we had to pick up the cost, this is how we would do it, or this is how we, I don't have those answers for you right now.
But right now, to your knowledge, Wiley is not passing on the cost of an emergency.
No, in fact, we used to go through all the calls and make sure that anything that was in the ETJ was not billed to us. And to my knowledge, Wiley never pushed back and said, oh, no, you got to pay for ETJ as well. So I don't.
Wiley doesn't. Wiley's already told me that they're planning on still answering in some of their county territories whether this goes through or not. So the problem with the county's perspective and the dollar value is where we pay $23.77 per month, or per run, the county's reimbursement rate, I think, is $198. So even if they go up by 10 cents, they're so far off from what the other big fire departments are and are charging per run. So how does the ESD solve it?
So either way, they're still going to come to us. They're going to come to us and say, well, they're in your ETJ, so you know you need to cover that difference. They're not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better. I know how I feel about it.
Any other questions?
Either council doesn't make a decision,
This feels
Someone want to make a motion on this?
Someone on here said it feels half-baked.
It does.
not
Yeah,
fully
you know,
baked, so-
and my dad used to say, if you come to me with a half-baked problem, it's gonna be answer is no.
Well, so I make a motion.
I motion we say no.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries
That would be non-consent.
to non-consent.
Not consent.
That is correct.
For 6.2. Sorry.
6.3, discussion and possible action regarding a proposed rental housing development at the northeast corner of Pecan and Parker Road.
That's city or is that?
That is ETJ.
ETJ.
Okay. Just slightly.
Mayor, did you want to start or do you want to?
Have you talked to them?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Very, very limited discussions.
Okay.
You want me to?
You can go ahead if you'd like to start. I can tell you guys today that I went out and checked with Levon. Yardley has a project that they built out in Levon. So I went out today, talked to their city administration, talked to their police department, things of that sort. They are a very good company to work with. Levon was very happy with how they permitted and kept everything under the guidelines and followed all the rules. And so that was a good thing to hear as far as that goes. And so I think if you guys looked, and it's 17 acres, so out in Levon, they have 34-acre development with 181 homes on it. What we're looking at here is 17 acres with 151 homes on it. So it's higher density than what Elevon is out in Levon. So that's something that we have to factor in and keep in mind. So I'll let you go from there.
Okay. This project was brought to my attention in the first week of April. In my initial discussion with them, they had talked about the possibility, and they weren't asked, they actually talked about the possibility of annexing into the town. I briefly shared it with the mayor. We thought it was best to put it on the agenda this evening, see if that was a direction council would even want to move forward with. This is a property that would be, the streets within the property would be private. They would not be public. It's an enclosed neighborhood.
Gated?
I can't recall if they had mentioned gated or not, but the streets in the neighborhood would be private. They wouldn't be public. James Morrison, or Taylor Morrison, who's the builder, has built several of these projects. I think there's roughly 9 in the Dallas-Fort Worth area now. There's roughly about 30 across the country. They basically build them, but also manage and maintain them as part of their business plan as well. That's why the streets are private. They want to keep them clean. They have standards of how the property needs to be maintained.
Is it like an HOA? Do you have fees?
It's more like an apartment complex.
These are rented, so they're not.
Yeah, in fact, the one at Levon, it's managed by your company, correct? Graystar?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just run just like an apartment complex.
So there is no HOA or condo
No.
association.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No. So the direction I'm looking for from council this evening is this a project that you would even want to consider bringing into the town? Because either way, depending upon what level of influence we have in the development, will dictate whether we annex the property in or whether it's in the ETJ. One way or the other, we're going to be engaging with the builder to develop this project, whether it's in the ETJ or in the town. Rough numbers, I think we're looking at, if the project was actually in the town, they've told me estimated total assessed value for the project's right around $45 million. You're probably looking at about $100,000 a year in property taxes. And then if you look at what our pattern has been as far as fire and EMS calls and align that with this particular project, you may be looking at $50,000 or $60,000 a year in fire and EMS calls to the development as well. That's worst case scenario.
Just by adding 150 homes to our current volume. Okay.
So,
Go ahead, sorry.
so it's getting built. The issue is, do we want it in the town or not?
That's correct.
And we can
And it's right
annex
next to another ETJ property that is currently for sale and
That is correct.
There's nothing we can do to stop the building.
No. I don't think so, is there?
Is there, how are they gonna do sewer?
They've had discussions already with the Northeast Valley Special Utility District. I'm not certain about the specifics, but it seems to be
That's not gonna be a
promising.
septic system.
Right, right.
That's
right.
correct. So Chester's been involved. They have two places they can tile. One is all the way down here in Inspiration, on the first street that turns back to the left. The other is, I believe, a manhole that's up kind of by the storage facility across the street from Sonic. There's an access point there that's low pressure as well. And so it's gonna cost them a little bit to get there,
Yeah.
but they could get there. Does this, if we tried to annex this, since we're R1.5,
It would have to be special zoning. We'd have to come up with, maybe a plan development or some sort of special zoning district. This will be one lot. They're going to want to plat it as one lot, so you'll have all these multiple units.
And it doesn't abut up to any town property, any residence, it's all ETJ?
The road,
it's not.
Yeah, so you have, what is it, Con Road, Parker?
There's two lots
Right.
along Parker Road
Right.
that are St. Paul,
Right.
that are right on Parker
The two in
Road. This
front.
would actually be right behind those two.
So the two in the front, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. Is that, so, in that pecan road, is that our road, or is that?
No, that is,
It's county. So if we annex that, and bring them in, does that road become our property or responsibility?
I would assume since it was the county road, their property line probably went to the center of Pecan, so you'd be picking up at least half of the road.
Can we control the lot layout and dimensions so it's not so dense?
I could ask, and see what the reply was, but I can ask.
Okay.
I have a question for you. So if it's gonna be built one way or the other, whether it's ETJ or annexed in, why would a corporation annex in to pay more taxes when we can't offer police protection, fire protection? We don't offer anything to them per se for the extra money.
we would have to. If they were in our town, we would have to.
We'd have to offer the services.
At least the fire.
The services we offer,
Right.
we would have to do.
It's a
yeah.
fire, for sure.
Well, but Wiley's gonna answer either way is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but if they're in our town, we have to cover it.
No, I understand that. I'm saying Wiley's gonna answer either way. And it would be sheriff's department, just like it is now. So why would, if I was a company, why would I wanna pay more money to be annexed in? I'm just trying to piece together why they would want that.
There weren't a lot of in-depth conversations about why this, why that. It was just, it was, and I wasn't even moving in that direction. I was just listening to the pitch. And during the conversation, they had offered the possibility of annexing into the town, and at that point, I told them I'm going to have to address this with council
It
first.
may help their insurance and it may help their marketing campaign.
Right.
I can see maybe a marketing end.
So what happens if they go bankrupt or start selling stuff off? What becomes our obligation? What if they go bankrupt like Vista Oaks?
Right.
HOA?
I would assume someone else would pick up the project and go with it.
I mean, it's a single unit, I mean, it's a single.
But it's a
plat.
single lot.
Yeah.
And then what about drainage? I mean, that's a lot of concrete to be laying down. We don't have any control over that.
Yeah, they'd have to-
And,
Somewhat.
Somewhat, even if it's still an ETJ, we would, yes.
So what kind of control? Can we tell them like how much they can pour, like how much they can cover?
We're gonna be looking at their drainage studies, their grading plans, what kind of impact it may have as far as flow on neighboring properties, what impact it could have on downstream. We'll be looking at all that as well.
I did the math on this, and we have 355 homes roughly in town, so this would account for 42% of the homes that would be located inside of St. Paul if we annexed it. Almost half.
Does that affect our
being zero lot line tiny places. So the question is, what is that?
Rentals.
It's the only,
Rentals.
it's the only non-1.5.
It's only nine.
Yes.
It's the only non-1.5 in our town, or it would be.
But,
Yeah.
yeah,
So given the density, I'd rather this not happen. So things I would recommend is, I know things that have stopped projects in the past are any kind of ecological conditions, Indian artifacts, that's one that's come up in Wiley. I'm serious about that. So if there's things that we can find to prevent that from happening, I think we need to push on that.
Well, I think, Robert, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we managed to get some concrete streets, some other things out of Inspiration when they built.
Yeah.
And so there's always possibilities, and even if they remain in the ETJ and making some of those concessions where we benefit in some way, but we don't have that responsibility, so that's always a possibility.
Mr. Albert, can you kind of walk us through the annexation process for coming from ETJ into the town?
it'd be a voluntary annexation petition. I would assume if I was in the, and we haven't had, again, these have been very high-level discussions.
No, I'm just wanting to know the
But I
process.
would assume if I was the developer and we're gonna do a voluntary annexation petition, he's going to want to probably outline what the development's gonna look like and what the requirements are going to be before he agrees to volunteer, do the voluntary annexation. So you're probably, once you receive that, council will receive the petition first. You will accept the petition if you want to or not. If you accept it, then that will start the clock running. And you're looking probably at 60 days, 60 to 75 days by the time you have the hearings and actually go through passing an ordinance and annexing property. But you'll have to hold hearings, blah, blah, blah. It's not overnight.
So does annexing require like a public hearing?
Yes.
And a public vote?
2 public hearings, and it'll take a vote from council to annex.
Like a vote from council, not residents?
That will vote from council.
And then the special use or whatever
Zoning,
is a separate?
right, correct,
Or we would have to have public hearings?
correct.
And so
One of the reasons we did not want to annex Inspiration is we didn't want the people in Inspiration to take over the management of the town, because we were certain they would.
Because it would come
So
up.
that's something to keep in mind here.
That's a good point.
I mean, this could change for the character of our town significantly.
Yeah.
And if you have that many people living there, it's likely that you'll have a decent number of people sitting here making choices for people who have very different living style.
Sure.
That's what we were concerned about with Inspiration. That's why we made the deal with them not to annex them, back when we had the power to still do it.
That's a good way to look at it.
That's kind of my,
And we're talking about people
So
that
150.
don't own, they're just
Right.
renting.
Right.
Yeah, which, yeah, I mean, that's a different mentality, and of course, the density that Mr. Graham brought up, so, yeah.
well, and we have all these other ETJs that have a possibility of doing something similar.
Right.
So
Barring the sewer.
So the risk
water
long-term to the town for 40 grand, maybe a year of additional tax revenue, is what I'm
Right.
hearing?
Correct.
Okay. That's a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
What are some of the disadvantages of not allowing them to annex in, should they present with annexation? Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I mean, I can't think of any, to be honest with you, JT. I kind of figured what the conversation, the way it's moving currently, that's the way council would, because they'd be a significant portion of your population. And you're absolutely right, I don't want to categorize groups as far as saying it would change the way of thinking of what they would like to see versus you, but there's a strong possibility. The same thing happened in Fairview when we moved forward with the Heritage Ranch active adult community. We knew then that that particular development would have a significant impact on the voting block in Fairview, and that's exactly what's happened. But the council was willing to move forward with that particular project for certain reasons because there were more benefits to it. This particular project, annexing in, I just don't see enough benefits, to be honest with you. So to answer your question, if I was sitting behind the dais, I probably wouldn't do it.
Is there?
But I have to present it to you.
Understood.
Is this This is nothing we're necessarily voting on or anything, this is just.
I'm just looking for direction.
The direction
Right.
of what Scott is, because we're trying to align the vision of the town.
It doesn't, to me, it doesn't sound like it's in the town's best interest to
Right.
allow for annexation.
Right,
It doesn't align with our,
right.
So I would be
Fine.
inclined to suggest that that's how you would communicate that.
Okay.
We've got a possible action on this, so is it something where we need to act to take a vote on?
Either way, it's not necessary. I mean, if you want to take a formal action that the council is not interested in
time.
annexing the property at this time, absolutely. And that would be a good way to work right there.
Yeah, I think,
At this time,
yeah.
absolutely.
make a motion, what do we go exit property at this time? Or allow annexation?
Right.
Because you can't, right, so it's not the ultimate deciding factor whether they build or not, it's whether they annex in or not.
Correct.
Do they need to be within town limits to receive sewer services?
That's up to Chester.
I'll make a motion. We do not accept annexation if they offer it this time.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Moving on, to item 6.4, discussion concerning reporting code violations at 3525 Lakeview Drive. Okay, Justin is going to recuse himself this time.
So, I asked for this to jump on, so I'm gonna jump right in.
Go right ahead.
Wait a minute. You asked for this to be on?
I did.
Okay. Just wanted to know who.
I requested it, just because we've had a bunch of communications going back and forth. I understood that we had resolved this as a body. I wasn't a member of the body then, but this was resolved April of last year?
Yeah.
And,
March,
huh?
it's March.
March of last year, sorry, March of last year. And then we got a totally different referral, so I just want to clear the air, which one's right. I mean, I reread the minutes from the last one, and everything was clear to me that it was a closed issue. So,
Were both issues addressed? in
No,
March?
it was just the one, I believe. Wasn't it on the dirt track or whatever?
It would have been on the
Right.
dirt track that was presented during.
The nature path?
The nature path.
I mean, we all have paths on our properties from foot traffic or ATVs or mules or tractors or anything
Or
else.
wildlife.
yeah.
Yeah, that was, it was presented to us last year in March.
We all agreed, the body agreed
The
to,
body
it was
agreed
not an
to.
issue or a violation. Okay.
Now, I don't necessarily think it doesn't stop it from being in the future unless it's voted with prejudice.
I don't even
And then I think
I
that-
mean, it's-
and then
you
that-
can keep bringing it back up over and over, I suppose.
Yeah,
Well, I'm kind of wondering why, I mean, I understand you had asked for it to be, but I mean, I'm kind of wondering why council's needing to address the code issue in general.
Well,
we get a differentiation in code.
if I may, yeah, so not regarding the dirt track, regarding the swimming pool issue, there's actually two code violations on there. So when you look at 3-6-1, our enclosure standards in our code of ordinances, it references 757 in context with residential swimming pools. 757 was never designed to deal with residential swimming pools. It's for multifamily and commercial public pools. So it was, back in the day, from what best I could interpret, what they wanted to do was figure out a code for the fencing and in-ground swimming pools. And that's what they were referencing. But at the same time, in 2000 and then again in 2016, we picked up the IRC again. And so we passed the IRC, which is your international residential codes. International building codes are meant for exactly that, buildings and commercial apartment complexes and structures such as that, where international residential code is specifically for single-family homes and two-family homes. And so when you look underneath what we adopted under the IRC, their barrier restrictions for above-ground pools are as long as it's above 48 inches and as long as it has a lockable or removable ladder, it does not require a fence. So again, we've got a conflict in our codes. If you look at 3.06 where it mentions 757, all it says is residential swimming pools, but it doesn't say in-ground or above ground. But then when you go over to IRC, which we also adopted, it specifically breaks it down between in-ground pools and above-ground pools. And when it gets to above-ground pools, if your pool is taller than 48 inches, I don't know how tall it is. 52. So that exceeds the minimum standards 48 for the fence that's required. So the pool is actually better and safer than the fence. And then if you have a removable or lockable ladder, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So if you have that, it meets the same standards as a lockable gate or things like that. It keeps a child from climbing in. I could be wrong on that. We could go to Travis Caperton and ask. But all I know is it was ordinance 215, I believe, in 2016, 12/12 of 2016, when we actually adopted the latest version of the IRC.
Scott, have the homeowners been notified of anything at this point?
No, they have not.
Okay, so there's no warning letter, fine, threatening, anything like that to them?
Correct.
So again, I look at it from that perspective. We can get more of a timeline from Travis Caperton, that's our code guy.
Okay.
So if we go through our code enforcement and he says, and he agrees that in IRC it's not required, he is our code guy. I would think that is, since we pay his salary, he's the man that makes the final decision. It shouldn't need to go past him as far as a code violation. The same thing if it's looking at your dirt track. If we're looking at, I don't know, what are they talking about, setbacks or something? Again, that would be for Travis to take a look at and see if under our codes, whatever was cited.
No, I'm going to disagree with you. He doesn't make the laws, he gives his opinion and interprets it.
Correct.
But,
As the licensed individual of the state.
but we actually, as the town, have the ultimate say, not Travis.
No, I think as far as code violations go, if he sees these and decides there's not a code violation, then that's as far as that goes for the code violations. If we want to overturn or change any of these rules, that as a government body,
Even
we
if he
can't.
thinks there is a code violation based on some interpretation, that doesn't also make it.
No, it would still come to us if need
Does not
be.
make it clear.
That is correct.
that Mr.
Since this has been heard before.
Does not have the ultimate authority to make a call. He's
Yeah.
really just.
Yeah. Part of the
Our
reason
agents.
why we went forward and asked for Clark's opinion is because if you go back and you read Travis's explanation as far as whether they were violating the setbacks, he didn't give a clear answer, yes or no. And without having a clear answer, and with it impacting one of my bosses, I thought it was in the best interest to reach out to our town attorney and get their interpretation, since we didn't get a clear yes or a clear direction from our code enforcement officer. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
He just wasn't certain. And that left an unknown of how should we move forward with it. And that's why we reached out to Clark.
And again, that's why I brought up the two different codes.
Actually, he wasn't uncertain. He was certain that there's ambiguity there and we have discretion on really how we want to interpret
Right.
it.
On the two,
And-
complaints, the two complaints was by email? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I believe, it's been so long, it may have been by email, it may have been a written complaint as well.
No, the email that I saw was
Yeah.
it's open to interpretation because it's not a structure, so do setbacks even apply, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And so he wasn't vague, he was just saying it's up to us as far as interpretation.
Well, see, then that goes
Page
back
4.
to you want your code enforcement officer, in my opinion, who is the seasoned subject matter expert, to give that direction. Then basically what they're saying, well, I'm not certain, it's not very clear. And if it's not clear, then that's coming back to us, whether it's staff or whether it's legal to make that decision.
So the last line that it reads is, to my knowledge, St. Paul still does not have code regulation fencing at this time, I'm not aware of any state law or town ordinance that blank, I guess the residence swimming pool is in violation of.
So, and again, I think that goes back to, he can't interpret 757
Right.
when it's talking about commercial pools. IBC is for commercial, IRC is for residential. So it all depends, and until I started doing some research, I was not fully aware that we adopted, so the ICC, which is Bureau Veritas,
Right.
goes off of. The ICC publishes 5 manuals. The IBC, the IRC, and a host of plumbing, electrical, mechanical code books. And so we adopted all 5 or so of them. I talked to the ex-mayor this morning, and he said, and you may know, Robert, so back in 16 when all this was passed, I think you were here then, the books were so thick, he said, what they did was they asked for a CD copy. And so there's a CD copy somewhere here that has all the manuals included in it, best I could understand. And so that may be why we don't have copies on your shelf in there. But still, it's clear that, like I said, in Ordinance 2015, we adopted the International Residential Code. And that specifically breaks it down between in-ground pools and above-ground pools.
So, I mean, so the agenda item is a discussion around this.
Yeah.
Where are we going with this discussion? What
I think we would have to, if we want to make a motion, we'd have to wait and do it next month.
Yes.
Yeah, do you feel like there's any conflict? I think I heard earlier there was some conflict in our ordinances.
That's what I was,
And if there is, we can ask Scott to start looking into that along with our attorney
Okay.
to see if there is conflict and if we need to make.
As far as the pool,
Yeah, what you can do,
Well, I guess I took a look at our ordinances right now. We do show on December 12, 2016, that we did adopt an IRC.
Yeah,
So if that
it's
IRC is
right there.
conflicting, yeah, it shows it right there, Article 3, was it?
But am I correct, if we have some kind of a code change, something that's already in existence that doesn't apply to?
Right, if there's a resolution. or
if
something
it's
that-
grandfathered,
Yeah,
as far as, yes.
so,
that would be correct.
I mean, I don't want to see this on the agenda again.
Okay.
Now, to my knowledge, let's make it public, there's not been a single neighbor in this community that has complained, expressed concerns, had any kind of, other than a former political opponent of this homeowner. There's not been any other people complaining or giving any kind of issues, correct?
No.
Okay, so, any kind of things that we changed, this was already in existence.
Yeah.
So
And
if
I'm
we're,
pretty sure that when this was adopted, you can look up the wording in the ordinance when we adopted the IRC, but I'm pretty sure it said that any other conflicting ordinances were now superseded by the IRC.
and even if it doesn't state that, would the time it was adopted set a
Set a
precedent?
precedent. You would think so.
Okay. I'm wondering if we can't run that by the attorney.
I will.
Yeah.
some,
Okay.
you might run it,
I'm not trying to say that we need to take action on it, because
Yeah,
it's discussion.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to keep things straight.
Scott, you might also talk with Clark, what some towns do, if they have the conflict like we're running into, on our 3.06, 001, whatever, where it mentions the 757, what they'll do is they'll put an exemption underneath it, an item A, and they'll list the above-ground swimming pool as that exception underneath what we currently
Okay.
have.
Okay.
That way, we're only changing
Yeah.
one little small sentence or paragraph
Right.
to make that code complete.
Right. Yeah, a city, a town, even though you adopt the IBC codes, residential codes, you can amend whatever sections you want for them to fit your needs. You don't have to go black and white, but you need to amend them because whoever's going to be looking at those codes, that's what they're going to follow.
Well, and I think we all talked about that way back when we come across something, let's solve it
Address it.
and move on.
And shouldn't this go through P and Z and not council?
I think if we have to resolve it by an ordinance, they would still come to us.
Well,
but
it would come to us with the advice
Yeah.
of.
Of P and Z.
You could
That's correct.
then.
So my suggestion on something like this is let's just follow the proper channels going forward.
Okay.
If somebody wants to make it go through P and Z or something, that's fine, but we don't need to have it on the council.
Okay.
Okay.
Any more discussion? You good, Larry?
Sir?
Okay. Moving on, 6S5, discussion regarding council participation in Collin County Days in Austin.
Excuse me, sir. Could
Yeah.
you go get the?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you got Justin. We're moving
No,
on.
we don't want him. Thank you. I forgot all about him. He's so quiet anyway.
So unfortunately, I was gonna put together more of a report. Between taxes, trying to get those done, and work and stuff, I haven't been able to put anything together in a short amount of time between when that was in this meeting, so my apologies on that. But there's a lot of really great information there. I got to meet, with our representative, Katie Noble, and talk with her about concerns about the ETJ and the lack of ability for towns to do planning, and the concern, even though I do believe in free market capital, of entities just being able to create political special utility districts that are often seem to have more power than towns do, and also they impede on our infrastructure, and we really are helpless. It's a battle between the state legislature, the counties, and the existing municipalities that are pretty much neutered at this point. So not a lot of support from the state on that. They're pretty much over time will kill towns, and it's not just small towns like us.
That's right.
It's going to be other towns as well. It's really a
That's
shame that TML is not doing more about this.
That's right.
It seems like since COVID, TML has not had the horsepower it used to have, and I don't know why that is.
Even before COVID.
Yeah.
It's been like that for decades, and worse, but.
So I could put together more of a report and email it out to you when you give me a little more time, but that's the gist of it. There's a lot of great information for bigger towns, and especially school districts were there, and there was information about our court system, and there was a mayor's panel with several mayors from across Collin County, and that was good to hear. The mayor for Prosper did talk about how they used to be an all-cash business, and as they grew, they did have to learn how to use different services for loans. That was interesting. That does apply to us. They did have to loans and bonds to be able to do things that they needed to do for the town, so that they weren't sitting on people's cash. So we certainly that resonates with me because I've seen that here. We do need to start figuring that kind of thing out, I think, to be able to be more effective, but not frivolous with money. I don't want to get us into debt. Nobody wants to get us into the debt that we can't pay off, but if we're smart and we use our brains and have people that can guide us, like some people on this council, as well as people that can assist us, then we could probably follow the footsteps of Prosper and dabble in that area to do some infrastructure improvements. So that's kind of it. Sorry for, again, I wanted to have more of a formal, put it up on the screen and go through the slides and all that kind of thing.
I'm sorry I couldn't make it down there for that. I really was looking forward to going.
Yeah, once every 2 years. So.
Yep.
Just remember, if you send out an email, send it to that guy.
Yeah.
So that guy could send it to us.
Okay, you bet. Yeah, I'll send it to you. You bet.
I got my hands up for that.
Yeah, any questions or?
Good. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for going down there, participating, and giving us an update on
You
it.
bet.
Item 6-6, the emergency addendum to the agenda in response to increasing volume of open records requests.
I vote that we strike 6.6. It's not appropriate. It's not a legal agenda item.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, 6.6 has been stricken. So at this time, we're going to go into executive session, guys. Appreciate your participation coming here tonight. It's always good to see people here, and I do appreciate your being here. As authorized by Chapter 551, Subchapter D, Texas Government Code, the regular meeting will be convened into closed executive session under the following exceptions. Section 551.071, consultation with the attorney. You said he's going to
Yeah, I'm gonna call.
zoom in and on zoning and various land use matters. I appreciate y'all's time, guys. If y'all want to stick around for the adjournment, we can go in the other room. Otherwise. Okay. So, coming out of executive session at, what time is it? 8:58. No action will be taken on anything from executive session, so at this time, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I can swing a hammer.
I'm glad there's a distance between the hammer and the nail. But you did your thumb a few times.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott.
Only one.